In 2012, Santorum was a star. Remember that? He won Iowa even though it wasn't clear that night that he'd won, and he finished second overall. But now the Washington Post says there's a chance Santorum won't even make the cut to be on the first primary debate stage in August. Ouch. Why? For the answer to that, and really for the answer to anything in politics, we need only turn to John Stanton, Washington bureau chief at the BuzzFeed News, and of course, an old show. Love you, John. Glad you're back. Santorum was, of course, #2 on the GOP side in 2012. The GOP is a next man up kind of party. Generally, whoever finishes #2 is the nominee in the next election. First Read today says no one better represents the fastest growing part of the Republican Party, working class white males, and yet Santorum seems DOA in this race. Why?
Well, I think there's two things. One is, normally the guy that's sort of the runner-up in the Republican Party's primary system is a mainstream candidate, is someone that the establishment is behind, and oftentimes they've been a person that remains very much in the public eye as a member of Congress or in the Senate or a governor or something like that. And Santorum really basically fell off the public map following the primary in 2012. And I think the other thing that's going against him is, I think the guy that really does represent the sort of working class white males of the Midwest and the South right now is certainly in their eyes is actually probably Ben Carson. You go any place. I was just in Greenville, South Carolina this weekend, and when you talk to Republicans down there, they all really, really like him. And in a lot of ways, he has replaced Senator Santorum as the sort of the Christian conservative that sort of the working class former sort of Reagan Democrats get behind. Yeah, but Mike Huckabee is Mike Huckabee, right? I mean, he has his own little niche, and that's about it, But Santorum sort of had this thing where he was the Reagan Democrats guy, and I think, Ben Carson has really taken that spot now.
Wow.
Very, very interesting. Governor Scott Walker, someone who is not officially announced, John, but he's already sort of giving us a sense of a strategy that he might take, which would include not potentially playing in the key state of Florida. Here's what he told radio host Laura Ingraham yesterday.
I don't think there's a state out there we wouldn't play in. I mean, other than maybe Florida, where Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio, listen, some of the polls essentially tied, and they're going to eat up a good amount of that financial advantage that Governor Bush is going to have.
So two things here. If you're not going to compete in a primary state, is this the right way to go about it, to say this early on? You know what, I might just not even do it at all. I mean, my dad tried that out last go-around in Iowa. I think that's something that he probably regrets. And two, can you actually become the nominee if you don't play in Florida? Isn't Florida arguably the most important state?
It's definitely one of the most important early on. It is an odd strategy, although this is a different kind of a campaign right now. Assuming that Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush are both in the election at the time of that primary, and let's say you throw in Chris Christie and maybe a few other sort of northeastern Republicans that could eat up some of the Republican vote down there, it does make a certain amount of sense, at least on paper. I think saying you're not going to compete at all right now could be not a good decision. You could sort of say we're going to compete and not really ever be super active there. John McCain kind of did that kind of a thing in Iowa. He was there a little bit, but he was clearly never going to win that. And it was, he had this sort of like these kind of decisions you can make without actually bluntly telling an entire state with a lot of votes, no, we're not coming.
Walker being a little bit too honest there, perhaps. John, I wanted to switch sides of the aisle to the Democrats. You remember Ivy Zedrick? She's the college student who asked Jeb Bush that tough question about whether or not his brother helped to cause ISIS. I had a chance to speak with Ivy on my web show Crystal Clear earlier and asked her what she would ask Hillary Clinton. Let's take a listen to what she had to say.
I don't know if I can think of a single question that I would ask her. I think that I would probably, first and foremost ask why she's not engaging more with the public right now. I think that it's sad that there have been headlines saying, Hillary Clinton takes a question when that should be a much more common. So I think that there should be a lot of questions asked of her, but in order for those to start coming, she needs to start engaging more.
And keep in mind, Ivy self-identifies as a Democrat. She's a college student, very well-informed young lady, following politics very closely. And she feels like Hillary Clinton not only is not taking questions from the media, but isn't taking enough questions from the public and isn't making herself accessible enough. Is that a damaging criticism of Hillary? Is that a damaging blow to her reputation as things develop?
I mean, I think damaging may be a strong word for it, but it is a problem that she has, and I think it's been a bit of a problem she's had for a very, very long time in her career. She is very much isolated from the public and from the media, and while a lot of Democrats and a lot of people in her world like to make this very much it's just the sort of the campaign reporters fighting with Hillary and saying that she's not talking to them specifically, but she's going out and talking to the public. The public kind of sees through that and realizes that the events that she's talking to people at, they're very scripted. The people have been screened. She's not having sort of random interactions with normal, everyday people on the street that she is not controlling, that are then, in the media. And, frankly, as sort of the eyes and ears of the public, that is the role that we play, is to talk to her, talk about her, and get her to answer questions that the public wants to hear. And, again, this goes back to something that has dogged her since 2000, frankly, that she keeps a distance from the public and from the rest of the country in a certain way, and that does concern people.
Yeah, and this seems to be one of those times where the sort of ideal thing for democracy that would be good, it's good to have candidates be accountable to the public and the press when the press is a responsible agent of the public, and also good for her politically, because it's like, when are you going to practice and get good at this? I mean, if Jeb Bush just had a big stumble because Megyn Kelly is a good interviewer who asked him a straightforward question that made him look really bad on Iraq because he couldn't answer, at least he's getting that practice. Would you say that she's had much of that practice recently, or is she just going to try it out if she wins the nomination in the general election where there's less margin for error?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, actually. I think that she has not had a lot of experience with it right now. She needs to get back into practice of dealing with everyday people and with the everyday rigors of a press corps that is going to be very critical of her and look hard at her record and the things she says. And, the more she gets out of her way right now, where she's not really involved in a difficult primary, for all the sort of interest that Bernie Sanders has gotten recently, it's pretty unlikely he's going to, oust her as the nominee for
Easy, John. Indeed.
For the party.
Easy on Bernie.
I know. I'm getting very far out on a limb there with that, but
Spoiler alert.
This is her a time when she can sort of do this stuff, get comfortable with people, get comfortable with the press, answer some of these questions in a way where she's not immediately going to get attacked, so that they can sit with the public for a while and not seem like that big of a deal. She maybe makes similar answers later on in the campaign during the general. So I mean, it seems like the time when you'd want to be out there doing it.
You'd think.
You would think. John Stanton, good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Good to be here.